So, what does it really take to build a global empire from the trunk of a car? It's one of those incredible stories of entrepreneurship, all about a tiny underdog that took on the absolute titans of its industry and somehow rewrote all the rules. This is the story of Nike.
I mean, it's the classic David versus Goliath tale, right? On one side, you have these established giants who seem untouchable, and on the other, you've got a newcomer with what most people would call a pretty crazy idea. So how does that battle actually play out? How does a company go from nothing to a global icon? Let's break it down. To really understand the giant that Nike became, we have to go way back to the beginning. Because before the swoosh, before Michael Jordan, there was a company called Blue Ribbon Sports, and its start was about as humble as you can possibly get.
Yep, you heard that right. The company that would one day completely dominate sportswear started right here, with its founder, Phil Knight, selling running shoes directly from the back of his Plymouth Valiant at local track meets. We are talking about the literal definition of a shoestring operation.
Just look at the sheer imbalance here. It's kind of staggering. On one side, you've got Adidas and Converse, absolute giants who owned the market. They had the factories, the distribution, the star athletes, the whole shebang. And on the other side, you've got Blue Ribbon Sports, a company literally run out of a car, just fighting for every single sale it could get.
In the book Shoe Dog, these early years are described as a permanent state of crisis. And that's not an exaggeration. The company was constantly, and I mean constantly, on the verge of collapsing. They were always just one missed loan payment or one delayed shipment away from going out of business for good.
You know, this constant state of crisis, it forces you to a turning point. Facing all this uncertainty, Phil Knight and his team made a decision that was either totally brilliant or completely insane. They decided to stop being a distributor and start creating something of their very own.
So, in the 1970s, that's what they did. They made the break. They cut ties with their Japanese supplier, Onitsuka Tiger, and put absolutely everything on the line to launch their own brand. And they decided to call it Nike.
The risk here was, well, it was immense. They had basically no money. Their former partner was threatening to sue them into oblivion. And every single bank they went to pretty much thought their business model was a joke. It was a true leap of faith.
But here's the thing. What they didn't have in cash, they more than made up for in culture. They built this team of people who were just fanatically passionate about sports and about the product itself. For them, this wasn't just a job. It was a mission. They were trying to build something better, and they were driven by this long-term vision, not chasing a quick profit.
Okay, so flash forward to the 1980s. Nike had survived, but now they were facing a whole new challenge. See, they were known as a running shoe company, but to really grow, they had to conquer the world of basketball.
The problem? Basketball was completely dominated by Converse and Adidas. To pretty much everyone else, Nike was just an outsider, a company that really didn't belong on the court. They needed a game changer, and they found one in a bold and incredibly risky bet.
They decided to pour a huge chunk of their entire marketing budget into signing a single, unproven NBA rookie, a guy named Michael Jordan. It was a massive gamble. I mean, if Jordan failed, or if the shoe just didn't sell, it very likely could have bankrupted the entire company.
But their strategy, it was revolutionary. See, this wasn't really about selling a shoe. It was about selling a story. They built the entire brand around Jordan's personality, his drive, his style, his icon status. They were selling an identity, a little piece of a dream.
And that enormous risk, well, it didn't just pay off. It completely transformed the industry and cemented Nike's place in history forever.
So in what has to be a stroke of pure marketing genius, the NBA actually banned the new Air Jordan for violating its uniform code. And Nike, they didn't back down. They leaned right into it. They ran these amazing commercials that celebrated the ban, framing the shoe as rebellious, as something the establishment was trying to suppress. It instantly made it the coolest thing on the planet.
And the result was an absolute explosion. Sales didn't just meet expectations, they shattered them into a million pieces. The demand was so overwhelming that it caught everyone, including Nike itself, completely by surprise.
And right then and there, Nike was no longer just a sportswear company. It had become a cultural phenomenon. The Air Jordan wasn't just a basketball shoe anymore. It was a status symbol, a piece of culture that completely redefined the relationship between athletes, brands, and all of us.
So after this unbelievable journey, from the trunk of a car all the way to global domination, what's the ultimate lesson we can take away from this whole story?
Well, it really seems to come down to a few key things.
First, taking massive but strategic risks when everybody else was playing it safe. Second, understanding the incredible power of building a story that connects with people's dreams, not just selling them a product. And maybe above all, an unwavering, almost fanatical belief in the vision, even when nobody else could see it.
And I think it's so important to remember that this was not a smooth ride to the top. The story of Nike is a story of constant struggle. It was defined by years of debt, of doubt, and of near failure. Their success was absolutely earned through sheer, grinding perseverance.
Which kind of leaves us with one final question, doesn't it? The story of Nike is all about betting on yourself when the odds are completely stacked against you. And it makes you wonder, for an idea you truly, truly believe in, what is the biggest risk you're willing to take?